man, I'm like slightly less late than usual with this video. How did that happen? Well, probably because I just bought less albums in 2023. And maybe your gut reaction to that statement is to assume it was a bad year for albums, but no, far from it. 2023 was awesome. I only bought less albums because my standards are continuously raising, but the albums I did love this year were really damn good. And all over the place too. Rock, pop, metal, rap, prog, dance, hardcore, they've all got their slice of the pie this year. And now I get to tell you about them, starting with some honorable mentions. Starting things off with some cool and colorful progressive rock, or maybe it's emo, math rock. It's hard to pin down exactly what the Spirited Spirits are doing on the Redshift Blues. All I really know is that it's pretty damn cool. Jazzy inflections, crushing riffs, and a consistent emotional through line of love and heartbreak filtered through its cosmic poetry. It's a very diverse album that rewards multiple listens. My only real hangup is that it kinda lacks for hooks, but it's got more than enough going for it to make it worth coming back to again and again. Stevie Boy is back, and with probably his most diverse album to date. There's plenty of his usual mellow pop and prog rock, but also a marked increase in electronic elements. The Harmony Codex feels like the perfect middle ground of his 2010s output and the full-on electronica of the future bites. It's certainly the most I've liked anything he's put out since Hand Cannot Erase, even if its longer tracks kinda overshadow the rest, and the shorter electronic tracks are kinda meh. I'd much rather see him try new things than stagnate though. Oh, you know me. I cannot resist these big 2-hour black metal space epics. Isak Trillohim finally found a sound that worked for me on Astral Constellations. Cosmic black metal by way of death metal riffs and tones, and it's just a delightful listen to get lost in for over 2 hours. It doesn't come together all that great as an album per se, and its muddier textures aren't quite my favorite, but it's very close to the platonic ideal of what I think all music should sound like, and spoilers, not the last of its kind on this list either. More on that later though. Unicorn is Gunship's best album. Is that a controversial statement? Like, sure, it doesn't have any songs as good as Tech Noir or Dark All Day, but honestly, that might work to its benefit, cause there's no one song that overshadows the rest of the album here. Their cool 80s inspired synthpop and synthwave sound shines brighter than ever with a much wider sonic palette on top of more hopeful lyricism that resonates really damn well in these trying times. It's, as ever, a bit too long in the tooth, but when the bops are nearly non-stop, I ain't really complaining. Nowadays, what I'm looking for most of my metal is ambition, and boy howdy did Flesh Vessel deliver on Yearning Promethean Fate Sealed. A full-on classical-inspired death and black metal record with sprawling compositions structured more like symphonies than proper songs, where you kinda just gotta get lost in the flow of it all and not sweat the smaller details. That's not to say the individual moments aren't plain awesome, cause they are, but it's the kind of album that's definitely more than the sum of its parts and one of the coolest listens of the year. I'm honestly kind of surprised The Armed ended up as high here as they did, and over Svalbard, who missed this list entirely with a similar conceptual premise about artifice and identity. But I don't know what to tell you, Perfect Saviors not only hit harder for me, but had the tunes to back it up. They finally wrangled their noisy maximalism into something memorable and re-listenable, and by God is it a ride. And a surprisingly fun one too. A lot of groovy tracks on this one. Are they selling out? Who cares? It's not like this is ever gonna get put on the radio anyways. As for the albums that you definitely will not be hearing on the radio either, unless the average person's taste suddenly get a lot cooler, let's get to the top 10 proper, starting with number 10. If you had told me at the start of 2023 that one of the best albums of the year was going to be a progressive rock album by way of a big band ensemble with an art pop vocalist, I probably would have believed you actually. That sounds rad. Shame it isn't real. Oh, wait. Witchy Activities in the Maple Death by Monica Rusher Big Band is an album that lives and dies off its band synergy. Listening to this album, you can just tell that everyone in the room was having the time of their lives performing together, and that's especially apparent in the more upbeat tunes, which are just tons of fun to listen to, while still layered with so many little instrumental touches that make them endlessly repeatable. That's the strength of an ensemble performance, I suppose, and the prog attitude these songs were written with.
I wonder did heaven prepare a welcome reception for her?
And like, yeah, the slower, moodier moments don't really connect as often, though ironically, penultimate track Direct Connection does have some real emotional heft to it, so I'll freely admit the biggest reason I love this album is because of how cool it is, less so because of how strongly I feel about it, but it's a compelling as hell listen all the same. I'm glad there's still weird corners of music being explored, especially when they're done this well. Certainly not a flawless album, but one I've enjoyed my time with a hell of a lot. Number 9. As for an album that's an absolute gut punch on each and every listen.
So do you think that we'll outrun it? Get past the pain of simply being.
I feel like the general consensus on No Joy has settled on, it's not Spanish Love Song's best album, but it's still really damn good, and yeah, I'm right there too. Like, this style of indie and heartland rock is not my thing as much as their usual brand of post-hardcore and emo, nor do I find its themes of trying to heal from grief while living in a broken world quite as cutting as the broader stroke anger and angst of their previous work, though, to be clear, I do still feel those themes hard, and I mean, Spanish Love Songs are still incredibly good at writing tunes, so...
Oh, you had me there for a second. I start to believe that we could make it.
Like, Dylan Slocum's voice makes any song better for having him on it, the band's still got a knack for hooks, the upbeat tunes still have that same driving energy to them, and the more heartfelt moments are just as hauntingly beautiful as ever. Sure, maybe the back half drags a little, but then the album's closer bowls me over every single time, so... No Joy may not be the next Brave Faces, everyone, but it's not trying to be either, and I'd rather see the band broaden their palette than endlessly repeat themselves to diminishing returns. Number 8. You knew this was coming. Not just because I already teased another big 2-hour space metal epic earlier in this list, but because y'all should know by now that anytime Midnight Odyssey releases anything, it's gonna end up somewhere on my list. Biolume Part 3, A Full Moon Madness is kind of just a testament to the fact that Dispatcher is incredibly good at the thing he does. Like, for all intents and purposes, this is about as far back to the basics as he's ever gone. The most raw and straightforward, guitar-driven cosmic black metal he's put out since Funerals. Except with an additional 12 years of knowledge on how to make it sound so goddamn good. Gorgeous textures, gorgeous melodies, gorgeous soundscapes between the moments of cataclysmic heaviness, good music to get lost in space to. And like, to me, that's always been the use case. There are individual songs here, but damn if I could tell you what any of them sound like, because the point is to get swept up in the flow, get enveloped in the atmosphere, just marvel at the beauty of the cosmos. I'd go so far as to say that Part 3 is my favorite of the Biolume trilogy, even without the genre pivots of 2, but really, any Midnight Odyssey album is worth your time. Yes, even with how goddamn long most of them are. Keep on doing your thing, you crazy spaceman. Number 7, and from the longest album on this list to the shortest one, and one that even I'm surprised is up this high.
Running from the guns, point and shoot. We used to play up on the playground. Running from the guns, who thought hardest part would be for me to stay down.
And to be clear, I don't mean that because of the genre. I've slowly been worming my way into the cooler side of hip-hop over these past few years, and McKinley Dixon's one of the most compelling voices in the genre, but because of that length. Yet, I don't know, I think beloved Paradise Jazz is the perfect length for what it's trying to do. The album doesn't have as many wild swings as For My Mama, but beat for beat, I do think it's the better album. Incredibly tight runtime that's still plenty the verse, and every single last tune is damn good, too.
Live from my mama's kitchen table.
And while I'll always be an outsider to the stories and lived experiences of the black community that Dixon writes about in his work, by God is he good at relaying them in a way that gets you really damn worked up. The 1-2 punch of Live from the Kitchen Table and Tyler Forever especially, man, that's all on top of immaculate instrumental arrangements, Dixon and all of his guest abilities to ride these loose jazzy beats and tunes that are catchier than they've ever been. Frankly, I feel like it's only up for Dixon after this, and I couldn't be more excited. Number 6. I don't think I need to say anything other than trans rights are human rights. Fun fact, by the way, 5 of the top 6 albums on this list are made by queer artists. Be Gay, Do Crimes. Sonic Crimes, even, because Jesus Christ. Rosa Fanscott crashed into the black and hardcore scene with a hell of a debut in Jake Blairtel. First and foremost, the riffs on this thing absolutely rip. Damn near every track has at least one riff that makes my jaw drop every time I hear it. And the energy, the intensity, the violence is consistent throughout. Though the only real blackened aspect of this is textural, but by God does it let the guitars cook, searingly hot. And the album itself is unapologetically queer and especially trans as hell. Even through a translation, the anger and anxiety that comes with being trans in, well, really any part of the world these days bleeds through incredibly clear, only amplified by how overtly angry the music itself is. And by God, is it the kind of catharsis I crave. It's like watching a bonfire made of cop cars, as beautiful as it is a powerful statement against bigotry, which is, again, packed to the brim with killer riffs, just as a bonus. Absolutely brilliant debut, and I cannot wait to hear more. Number 5. Always remember that no matter who you are, where you live, or what you're doing, you are never safe from gay ponies. Carousel is, to date, my favorite Violet Pony album on a pure musical level. The most diverse, and most colorful, the most chaotic. Just the way I like it. Plenty of the gorgeous, lushly arranged pop sounds Violet's already proven herself with, but there's touches of new jack swing, alternative metal, drum and bass, whatever the hell you call the Carry On Child, just so much here, and all of it's so much fun to listen to. No two tracks sound alike, yet despite that, they all mesh together really damn well, and damn near every one of them knocks it out of the park.
One without the other is a paradise lost.
And I have no real clue if Violet has seen my Cutie Marks video essay or not, but it's interesting and amusing how Carousel is kind of just an expansion of the concept of How to Kill a Monster into a full album. One that not only sticks to the landing of its themes of coming to peace with your inner demons, but does it so much better that it pretty much obsoletes that song entirely. It's not something that I find personally resonant, but I'm sure it is for a lot of people. And like, when the album is this jam-packed with awesome tunes, yeah, no reservations, this is great stuff. Number 4. While I felt lately like I'm starting to grow out of metal on the whole, not that I've ever been a hardcore metalhead in the first place, but there's still always going to be those albums that come around every so often that remind me, man, metal can be so goddamn cool. I don't know how to describe Sarmat's determined to strike other than, like, so, imagine a death metal band and a respectable jazz band got booked for the same venue at the same time, so you've got these two completely different groups of people up on stage, and they just get more and more aggressive with each other by the minute, making more and more unhinged music, until something snaps and they all get completely wasted, and oops, now they're a freaky jazz metal band working together as a unit to make one of the most unhinged metal tunes of the year. It's like watching the band defy the oil and water effect in real time, where the nastiest riff you've ever heard and the beautiful, tasteful jazz soloing kinda exist on top of each other. But more and more, the riffs get swallowed up into a chaotic mess of free jazz noise until it all just comes together by the end and you can no longer tell where one ends and the other begins. And like, to be clear, Sarmat are a jazz band first and foremost, but this is just the purest and frankly best execution of jazz metal I think I've ever heard. It just plain rocks, man. So cool. Number 3. While this album isn't the best album of the year, and it's not particularly close either, the top 2 are so far ahead of everything else here, it's comical, I'd say it's the album that I personally needed the most this year. And all I really gotta say to introduce it is gay. Trance is probably my favorite form of dance music, and house is slowly creeping up behind it, so Romy's midair having both in spades while also being queer as all hell, it's like a gift from the gods. Helps that the production is consistently immaculate, gotta be the best sounding album of the year, plus the tunes themselves are all great, from the mellow, melancholic opening trinity, to the mantra-driven beauty of tracks like Strong and Enjoy Your Life, and the groovier upbeat cuts scattered throughout. It's such a colorful listen. Man, the album's emotional arc, kicking off deep in the mires of heartbreak and queer anxiety, feeling a need to keep your feelings hidden for fear of judgment by others, yet slowly opening up across the album's runtime until the blunt mantra of Enjoy Your Life leads Romy to do just that in the openly hot and horny She's on My Mind. It's a really goddamn beautiful arc that both I and tons of queer folk definitely relate to. And like, yeah, it runs a bit short, but when both the tunes and the feels are there, I hardly care. Just means I can play it more often. Number 2. Okay, so what kind of bonkers year did we have when the best metal album of the decade so far is only number 2? I have been singing Dancing Mantra to my soft songs praises all goddamn year because Victory Over the Sun has just completely cracked the code with this one. Avant-garde metal that's as colorful as it is violent and so diverse in all its twists and turns that it's hard to pin down exactly what it is. Black metal, I guess, but death metal, sludge metal, jazz metal, post-metal, freaking synth metal, they all feel appropriate at different points in the album, and yet the whole thing just fits together so elegantly there's nothing else to call it but genuinely progressive. And I could sit here all day picking apart the individual songs. The epic triumphant grandeur of Thorn Woos the Wound, the brutalist and unrelenting Wheel, the jazzy and atmospheric come down of The Goal of Having Nothing, the abrasive and queer rage of Madeline becoming Judy, or the twisted death spiral of sound that is Black Heralds. But the truth is that the album is as strong as it is because of how all those disparate parts flow together. The moments that don't stand out as much on their own are absolutely killer in context. It's a real album's album. It's transgressive, it's, well, transgender. The thing just sounds queer as hell, and the oft abstract but violently pointed writing makes that damn well clear. And it came at just the right time before Pride Month 2023, a Pride that sure as hell felt like this album sounds. But more than all that, it's exciting. No metal album has gotten me quite as excited as this one since, hell, Warforged and the Novelist way back in 2019. Been way too long. Any metal fan, no matter what you're into, is doing themselves a disservice by missing out on this one. Number 1. And yet, despite being the obvious album of the year from the moment I heard it, Victory Over the Sun is not topping this list. Because the best hardcore album of the decade also came out in 2023, and it's just, well man, you tell me. No, play the real song. I point out this moment because it's like the exact moment I knew this album was going to be incredible. Dreamlo's Last Ever back in 2021 was already a damn strong listen, but In My Saddest Dreams, I Am Beside You basically uses it as a jumping off point to absolutely pull the rug out from under you and deliver the angriest, nastiest, most intense screamo album of, hell, I'm gonna say it, of all time. An album so visceral and unhinged that it makes me feel physically ill every time I listen to it. So yeah, it's, so far at least, the best album of the 2020s. The album is an absolute battleground of sound, where catchy, headbanging riffs will clash against searingly visceral, almost black metal-esque pummeling breakdowns that are as beautiful as they are overwhelming, all while the crushing post-metal breakdowns intrude into the mix with regular frequency that tear apart the songs that they show up in, all culminating in the final 2 tracks to form the most crushing of the entire bunch, the latter having everything into the kitchen sink come together for one hell of a finale. And all I can really do is watch in awe. And for an album with heavy themes of spiraling depression and anger amidst the world we're all watching fall apart in real time, again, just that little bit queer-coded for good measure, like, yeah, of course it's violent, of course it's sickening, of course it's absolutely too much to bear, and by God does it remind me that I do still feel, I am still feeling despite it all. That I feel physically ill proves that, and by God am I excited to go on this maelstrom of sound with Dreamwell over and over again in the coming years. In My Saddest Dreams, I Am Beside You by Dreamwell, the best album of 2023. Take care and stay angry, y'all.